Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming back today. Call the roll, please, to start with.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On the roll, Councillor Penner.
Here.
Councillor Sharp.
I'm here.
Councillor Spencer.
I'm here.
You, Councillor Walcott.
I'm here.
Councillor Wong. Councillor Wyness.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Carra.
I'm here.
Councillor Chabot.
Present.
Councillor Demong.
Present.
Councillor Dhaliwal. Councillor McLean.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Meehan.
I'm here.
Mayor Gondek. And Deputy Mayor Chu.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. We do have quorum.
Thank you. And just a short recap. Last night, we finished the public hearing on item 7.3.1. And now we're going to go to the question to administration. And after that, as I understand it, we'll have some amendments. And also at the end, we're going to have at least one motion arise. So let's start a question to administration. Councillor Penner, please.
Thanks. Thanks, administration, for being here. So a couple questions were raised by the public. I think some of this was addressed in the engagement sessions that you did, but I think just really important to clarify based on a few things that came up yesterday. So the removal of, I think I have it right, 2.2.1.6. Can you just clarify what the removal of that clause, what it does do and what it doesn't do with respect to the local area plans?
Sure. So, Councillor Penner, the removal of this clause will basically bring into alignment the rezoning for housing decision with those three local area plans.
Okay, so it makes it compliant with the land use bylaws. That is another way to say it?
Yes, it aligns council's decision with rezoning for housing by removing specifically in 2.2.1.6 C, the locational criteria for development above with 3 or more units, which effectively didn't allow for mid-block row house. And now that council's made the decision to rezone to a new base district, this would ensure that people that have already been rezoned to RCG could develop based on that district in these approved local area plans.
Okay. And that base district doesn't preclude semis or singles also from being built if that's what the individual property owner wishes to pursue?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. With respect to HGO, when in sort of the way that is sort of updated and amended, it talked about multifamily being allowed in neighborhood local, and at a grade, but what we're talking about is that row housing. There is other parameters for HGO that's in the land use bylaw, right, that talks about it needing to be on neighborhood connectors essentially and above. So can you just reinforce how the two documents work together to make sure that HGO isn't going to be permitted in neighborhood local?
Yeah. So basically, when an application comes into the city, it needs to be compared against both the local area plan, if it is in place, but also the land use bylaw. So the land use bylaw has basically location criteria within it that says HGO can only be permitted within the neighborhood connector and neighborhood flex urban form categories.
Thanks. A couple of the other concerns just with respect to like the contextual development of towns with respect to height and to shadowing. There are still clauses within local area plans and within the land use bylaw that create that environment. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. And just in updating these three local area plans, it's also my understanding that it makes them consistent, aligned with some future local area plans that are sort of just, coming through IPC and council direction. So all of the clauses then are consistent across all of, I think it would be like 6 or 7 local area plans.
So correct. South Shaganappi Communities, which was at IPC last week, has this policy, so it will be consistent. Chinook Communities, which is coming up at the end of the month, and West Elbow would be consistent. And then Riley is currently going to be at the public hearing, so if that alignment were to happen, it would need to happen as part of that process. And then, as the chair said, there may be a motion arising to look at aligning East Calgary as well.
Okay, so what I hear is that the update before us is really about creating consistency across policies to make sure that we are allowing for all kinds of housing.
Correct.
All right, good for me, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penner. I just want to acknowledge that Councillor Wong's in the chamber and Councillor Delawa also joined us remotely. And next we have Councillor Sharp, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Sorry, did Councillor Penner ask about 2.2.1.6D? Councillor Penner, do you mind answering that really quick? I don't want to re-ask the same question.
I basically asked about the entire clause.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how we'll get to the other questions and answers. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. Okay. So there's a couple of things with the LAPs in general, but I'm going to stick to obviously what we heard last night. When I read the motion, I would expect that every part of the local area plan would be open for discussion. And so some of the stuff I read when it came to the engagement questions were designed in a way I felt that maybe people would be dissuaded from sharing more information because their comments may not be relevant to the questions being asked. So why did we only ask certain types of questions? So the first question would be directed to improvement options, and then the second one was like an open-ended and very broad. So how are those two questions asked the engagement session selected? And do we feel that we actually targeted enough accuracy in capturing everybody's feedback for these particular this refresh, I'll call it?
Yeah, and I can start, and then maybe Engaged can jump in. So the local area plan reconnect was happened because of two pieces of work, and maybe we'll ask clerks to pull up our presentation so we can go to the slide around council's direction.
If clerks could pull up our supplementary slide.
This slide is fine.
Oh, this slide's fine. Never mind.
Or do you want to go to the, sorry, clerks, can we go to attachment 1, actually, with council direction? I'm just Perfect. So the reason the LAP Reconnect happened was because of two pieces of work. One is Home is Here. And so the first part was administration was directed to remove the single detached special policy area from the Guide for Local Area Planning, which has already happened, and to remove it from any relevant plan. So the first plan and the only plan where it's relevant is North Hill. And so we're bringing forward that work today. The second piece of work was through rezoning for housing. Administration was directed to re-engage on the approved local area plans. Sorry, just looking at, to see whether any amendments to the LAPs are warranted as a result of the proposed rezoning and report back. And so what we looked at was, given the fact that council had made this decision on rezoning for housing and a new base district, we wanted to focus our engagement efforts on pieces of work, investment opportunities, projects, mobility enhancements, that type of thing that would support that additional growth that council had approved. And so that's why our focus was on Chapter 3 and Appendix A of the plan. So when we went out to the communities, we were clear about, we're making some changes to Chapter 2 based on council's decision, including what we had just spoken about, removing the locational criteria to ensure that RCG was supported throughout the local area plan. But where we really got into the meat of what enhancements or improvements we could make to the plan, they were focused around those improvements. Of course, we had our sessions in person. People could sign up and talk to a planner for a full hour, talk to the team. We didn't limit what they could talk about. We heard a lot of comments about rezoning. Our engagement happened shortly after the rezoning decision was implemented in the fall. And so we're always open to that. And we have our full what we heard, what we did reports with all of the verbatim comments. Nobody's restricted from adding comments or talking to us about anything that they want to talk to us about, but we were clear about what the scope was for this reconnect. The intent wasn't to reopen the entire local area plans. Some of these plans were only approved back in 2023, so they were only about a year old, and we heard through people in that process that once the plan was approved, we've committed to those communities not to come back and make one-off amendments to these local area plans. However, given that council had given us direction, we had to go back and do that work. And so we were trying to balance those different pieces. Council told us to do this work. And at the same time, we wanted to ensure the engagement we were doing was done, was meaningful, and the pieces that we were asking about were things that we could actually change and implement in the local area plans.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, I appreciate the answer to that. So I'm going to ask you two kind of pointed questions. And I feel like saying specifically, nobody asked about rezoning at all. Like, I don't see that being asked in here. And that one question. And my second question is regarding the new ones coming. What's going to happen to all of those new local area plans coming if this gets approved? I feel like the community feels like it was a waste of time. So how are we balancing that answer? So my first one, why didn't you ask about rezoning? And two is, moving forward and new local area plans are coming, like South Shaganappy, do we feel like the community feels like everyone's time was wasted? Mm-hmm. So I need some answers to those.
So why didn't we ask about rezoning was because council had already made the decision on rezoning. So we didn't need to ask about that because that decision was made by council. The second piece of work, if communities are feeling as though the process hasn't been valuable, we've developed the entire local area planning process to build on that. And as the plans that are coming up right now have been developed, that decision on rezoning for housing was made. And so we aren't engaging on where row house could go because council has already made the decision that it can go citywide. I don't think that means that there are many other pieces of work within the local area plans that we have not received very meaningful feedback on and that we haven't included in our local area plans. Just last week at IPC, we talked about the South Shaganappy communities. We shared in our presentation exactly some of the changes we made based on feedback. Local area plans are about a lot more than just row houses. Row house is very important to people, but it's only a very small piece of everything that a local area plan encompasses. So I would say our process continues to be valuable. We continue to value the engagement, the feedback, the relationships we've built as we've developed the South Shaganappy communities, Chinook communities, West Elbow communities, local area plans. And that feedback can be seen in the local area plans that we're bringing forward.
Okay, can I just interject a second though? And I appreciate that. I think where I struggle a little bit is the exact motion actually said engage with affected communities to determine whether any amendments were warranted as a result of rezoning. So that's where I feel like there was a bit of a miss on the engagement piece. So I know time is limited. I'm going to go to my next question though, because I do have like a couple more questions. Regarding Appendix A, how does the city ensure developers are not only aware of the suggested community improvements, but also enforce the suggested implementation options if Appendix A is not statutory? So what I'm trying to get at, is this through a DP or a land use application? Is it part of the development agreement? Because they're going to have to also be held to a standard. So how are we making sure that happens?
So the intent was...
Before you answer, and just a thought, Councillor Sharp, would you like to
Yeah.
put in a motion that so each council member can ask question twice? The reason I said that is that you only got 6 seconds left.
Oh, that was my last question, as long as I can get the answer. So, no, I think we should just keep to the normal time frame. Councillor Chu, but thank you. Go ahead, Brianna.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great. So the intent with Appendix A and Chapter 3, Improvement Ideas, Investment Opportunities, is to collect feedback from communities through our process about potential upgrades, changes that can support growth and change. And we do talk as well with our internal colleagues about projects and ideas and vet those as well through the process. We don't have a mechanism to force developers to build, certain number of projects. But as, for example, a development permit were to be applied to or applied for, our DART team, our development applications review team would consider obviously the policies in the local area plan, potential improvements. So say you were going to build a multi on a street, and in Appendix 3, there is something that speaks about, an enhanced sidewalk on this street. That discussion could happen through that process. So those projects aren't funded, but they do daylight them, and our sustainment team that's looking at how the local area plans are implemented is working with other groups like Established Areas Growth and Change, our 5A team, and other teams about how those projects can come to fruition. And we also have our local area investment fund, which through this budget cycle has provided $20 million in funding to start construct some of those projects. So I think there's always opportunities for how we can realize those projects through different buckets of funding, through applications, but it's not something that is a requirement anytime an application comes in, for example. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a learning process, but thank you very much. That's it for me, Councillor Chu.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And next we'll have Councillor Wong.
Thank you, Chair. At IPC, I asked a number of questions about Section 2216, and I think I got most of the answers I had there. But I just want to reiterate a couple of things that's clear. In Section 2216, the subsections in there, with the exception of the one that's the amendment, I was told that everything that's in 2216 subsections were removed because they're covered in 2214, correct?
So we can go through these. So for A, the one that speaks to secondary suites are already supported, were allowed by the existing land use designations and are not considered a unit. That policy is not required. When we
I just want to clarify before.
Yeah.
Not required because it's covered in 2214?
So the policy that's covered in 2214 is the policy D that speaks to access to sunlight and shade, and then protection of existing and healthy trees. So if you are looking at any of the local area plans, it's just 2 pages above, and that policy in section 2.2.1.4 C speaks to under 3 III speaks to consider shadowing impacts on neighboring properties, and so that speaks to that piece. So it is in multiple places. So it's effectively redundant. And then the section 2.2.14 heading is neighborhood connector and neighborhood local. So it not only covers the neighborhood local, but it also covers the neighborhood connector as well. So that is a consideration for both of those urban form categories.
Okay, so you just made reference to 2 of those subsections in 2216 that's covered in 2214.
Yeah.
The remainder, are they covered anywhere else?
So when we talk about the protection of existing healthy trees, landscaping, that's covered in Chapter 3 under Section 3.2.4 AI. And we have policies that speak to tree canopy in that section as well.
Okay, so bottom line, everything that was in 2216 is covered somewhere in the LAP document.
Yes, it's either covered or we no longer need it because of the rezoning for housing decision.
Okay, thank you for that. The question I posed to some of the speakers yesterday, that when 2216, the removal of the subpoints, were they aware of the reason why they were being removed? And all of them said no, they didn't know that. All they saw was these things are being removed, therefore they're concerned, fear that they couldn't do a single detached, they couldn't do this, they can't, all these things wasn't done. How is it that through our engagement process, we don't explain that when we do a change, what the ramifications are?
Want to start?
Yeah. So when we went out and did the engagement, we were very clear as to why we were removing these policies. I'm unsure as to why members of the public felt like they weren't clear as to why we were removing them, but we were pretty clear as to why those sections were being removed and that some of those policies were also found throughout the local area plans in other sections.
So my question then, when it comes to the report to council, right, and I went through this back and forth, I didn't see what was just referenced here, that you can find these sections in 2216, in chapter 3, So why isn't the report, it wasn't clear that we're not removing them for deletion's sake, but we're removing for redundancy's sake, and they are found somewhere else? Because the clarity of the conversation we had yesterday is not clear simply because it wasn't clearly referenced.
Yes, and I think that's fair. We're always trying to make things clear for the public. When we had our in-person sessions, we did have that full hour to sit, go through the policies, answer any questions that we had. We also offered sessions to the community association board. So we did hear last night from some of the boards that said they may have been confused, but even they were invited to that session. We're always happy to have a conversation with them. We didn't hear about some of these concerns until very recently. So that's really unfortunate because we're definitely never intending to make things difficult to understand or to hide anything. We want to be very open about what changes are being made and why they're being made. So that's definitely something we can continue to improve on.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't think members of council think that, that administration is hiding things. But at the same time, when it gets to, clarifying, explaining, marketing, selling, whatever you want to do, we have to be very, very confident that our constituents understand, especially when we have engagement sessions that are a short time window or not enough people can attend. That's the concern. Okay.
Councillor Wong?
Yes.
It's Director Goldstein. I wanted to talk about that trust piece just one last bit, because we heard you. We heard that there was confusion on this and that the language wasn't plain enough and that we have to do better when it comes to that piece. When we started to approve and bring forward for approval the local area plans, we made a commitment to communities that we would not amend those local area plans for 5 years. That's what we said when we brought forward the North Hill plan. And this isn't going on your time, so don't worry. That trust and in that relationship is because we understood how much time and energy and trust had been put into creating those. We heard that last night. And we have not. You heard from one member of the citizens in Westbrook that they were really frustrated that we didn't amend the plan because they have 2 active applications. We know there are many, many more of those, that we are not willing to amend those plans. The reason that this was all done really was because we wanted to make it in alignment with the 2 directions from council. And I want to ensure that the public understands, like, we're not trying to get anything through, we're not trying to break trust, and that relationship that we developed during the local area plans is important to us.
Ms. Goldstein, I fully appreciate that, and that wasn't my point. My point was on those 2 elements that we could have done a better job. That's it. Okay, I'm running out of time. 2 things that was asked yesterday. One was on trees and one was around greening. And again, if you can find a way to include those comments in the changes or in the LAP, can it be done, yes or no?
So I believe Councillor Walkup will be bringing forward an amendment because we did realize that there was an omission to the appendices, and the last piece of the appendix for 2 of the LAPs was missing from the bylaw. So that will be corrected.
Okay. And the last thing was a question for, if we do change like this in the future, can we send a red line version of what was there, what was not there when we see them?
When we did the engagement, we did have a strike-through version, but yes, definitely we can
Our
look
version.
at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the final seconds, I do have an amendment I would like to do once we move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wong. Next, we have Councillor Walcott.
Thank you. It's just a relatively quick question, but the conversation that was also had yesterday was just about what does ground-oriented multi-residential mean? And I was just hoping you could clarify that it really just means a door with access to the street and not an apartment building.
Correct.
That is all.
That's it? That was easy. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Walcott. Now we have Councilor Meehan, please.
Thank you, Councillor Chu. I'm happy to get this on the floor. I guess what I would say about this is I know that there's been a lot of conversation about rezoning, and I recognize not every councillor was in favor of that initial decision, but it did pass, and it's important that that direction permeates through everything that we do, just so that it is fair for all of the local area plans. And so essentially what this is doing is not relitigating the rezoning, but really allowing our policies to be consistent across local area plans. And if we don't pass this today, we'll end up with some local area plans that respect that direction and some that don't. And we've heard from residents, Director Goldstein brought it up, the Olubenga Adebayo, who was here last night, who said, you need to bring all of these back up all in alignment, because that's really confusing. And I think Councillor Wong and Councillor Sharp and Councillor Penner, we did a good job of trying to help residents understand what changes are actually coming through these and which are just moving locations. I think some of the concerns we heard yesterday came from just not understanding what was changing, as opposed to there actually being some different fundamental change than that residents didn't know about. So because of that, I really hope, kind of irrespective of how you felt about the rezoning, and I know people have strong opinions of that we just don't create additional red tape and chaos by having inconsistencies in our plans. And so if this doesn't pass, that is what would happen. And I think that would create a lot of really unhappy residents, because then we are going to be treating people very differently. So anyways, thanks to all the colleagues for engaging and for coming back today, and to Councillor Wong and Councillor Sharp and Penner for really clarifying some of the things that I don't think the public was able to discern from that engagement, and to administration for their openness to kind of that conversation and learning more and getting feedback on how we can make these changes a little bit more front facing for residents. So with that, I am open, and I recognize there will be some amendments coming.
Thank you. Has been moved by Councilor Meehan. Who would like the second? Councilor Walcott is seconded. Now let's go. Okay, the debate. Anyone would like to put in the RTS? Councilor Wong, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a short debate, and I kind of covered it mostly in my questions and answers. And that is, again, yes, the rezoning was approved last May, put in place in August. It is effective to the 3 LAPs we're talking about, but it wasn't reflected in the LAP, so this is the reason why we're doing those changes now. The engagement was directed by council to you to get out to the community and get out there and make sure they understood, what the ramifications of the rezoning was, and get the changes in accordingly. The concerns we heard from the constituents are, again, that engagement wasn't done either effectively or consistently, or it doesn't matter. They are, you've heard many of the concerns. My comment in my debate is to simply say, through my 3.5 years of being here, engagement is extremely important, because it gets down to confidence and trust that we, council, administration, does the job. I'm not trying to chastise. It's just, you got to burn in our head. We got to make sure we do it right. And it takes time, and it's hard, and it can be brutal. People are commenting on it, but we got to do the job, okay? With that, hearing from not just the people who spoke yesterday, but all the letters that people sent in, there's a lot of people out there who still don't understand it. Even if we pass it today, they still won't understand it, right? So my question is, how do we go forward to ensure that everybody does understand it, or at least get back out there and explain it to them so they do understand it, okay? And so for that, I'm not sure how I can support it at this point in time, until we ensure that all members, all residents of the 3 LAPs, truly appreciate the changes. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wong. Councilor Walcott, please.
Thank you. I don't know if we'll ever get the full consensus that Councilor Wong is describing, and I understand that's actually a very natural thing. What I look at this amendments that are being made here, one of the most important things that I describe to most people is there's actually a decision that this council does often, and we have this conversation about plain language, as plain language as we could. And it was really interesting watching what happened. I went to one of the engagement sessions, and this amendment is purely plain language, right? It's so plain that it actually created its own level of confusion because people were curious, where can I find the strict definition of the X, Y, and Z? And flip side, you go to a different LAP and you hear the opposite, which is these are, they say it was, this is planning language and we want it in plain language. And there's a benefit and there's a trade-off to both. If you use official planning language, there's always a place to look because there's always a definition in a bylaw somewhere. And if you use plain language, sometimes it's what we all want to say to each other, but then you risk not being clear. And I think that's what we're experiencing here. It's the only reason why I really wanted to just emphasize in my question is that the biggest thing I heard throughout Westbrook was what can be built beside me tomorrow that's different from today. And I said the same thing after rezoning. This is all this is. It's nothing's changed. There's no apartment buildings. And you heard that in the questions, right? People were saying like, what's multi-residential? Does that mean HGO? And the answer was no, it doesn't. It's like, could it be an apartment building? And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's really just a home with a door that has access to the street. The conversation and the compromises that we made during rezoning, that's what this is. This is an amendment that came right out of rezoning that just says, hey, we have to make some changes, go back and talk to people about them and make sure that with the changes that we're bringing, the local investments are pushed up to meet that shifting landscape. So it's really clear to me that this is honestly very straightforward, but that if you choose to use pure planning language, you'll alienate people. And if you choose to use plain language, people will ask you what's the strict planning language that they need. You even heard one of our residents say, I need this for legal purposes. And for that reason, that's why sometimes we don't use plain language, is because we want to be as specific as possible. That is a conflict of counsel. We want to be as simple as possible, but when we are, there's some frustration around the questions that it raises. So I think the important part here is it's incumbent on us. What happens next, right? That's what some of my colleagues asked, and that's what the public asked. What happens next? What happens next is really to ensure that we as counselors are the ones that are continuing to just answer these questions with good information. Good information. Of all the emails and letters I received, I remember responding to them telling people that, oh, like, don't worry, that hasn't changed. What about trees? I says, that has not changed. What about shadowing? I was like, that has not changed. And the fact that it was only simply 2 pages earlier, it really helped in my many conversations. And I know we heard from the public yesterday, but I hope at least in that conversation, the public can be satisfied that just because it's not under Section D, a subsection of policy that's getting amended, that does not mean it's absent from the building site plans and design guidelines that are within the LAP that the community worked on, because they're all there. So happy to support.
Thank you, Councilor Walcott. Councilor Chabot, please.
Well, I won't be supporting these amendments. These amendments are here clearly for a reason. They're here because they need to be aligned with the previous council decision, which I didn't support. So it's kind of hard for me to say yes to this when I voted no to something else. And this is essentially takes away that last little limiting factor to allow it to happen everywhere. What was previously voted on, which again, I voted against. So it'd be kind of disingenuous for me to vote for this when I voted against a previous amendment that this will now enshrine into all of our LAPs. So it's basically saying there's no more limiting factors to where our CG is going to go. Yes, RCG. Council approved it. It's already approved. It is part of our land use bylaw. I don't disagree. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what the administration is proposing. It is 100% aligned with council's previous decision. I'm not aligned with council's previous decision, just to be clear. Anyways, that's why I'm voting no.
Thank you, Councillor Chabot. Councillor Sharp, please.
Yeah, well, my debate won't be that much different than Councillor Chabot's, but I won't be supporting this because I did not support blanket rezoning. But the motion I brought forward during blanket rezoning public hearing was for administration to review all the plans already completed as part of the local planning program and to engage with affected communities to determine whether any amendments were warranted on a result of rezoning. And so we are here because of rezoning. And so I think my clear expectation from this was that every part of the local area plan would be open for discussion. And so I feel like that was a little bit, maybe, I don't know, I feel like it fell short, put it that way. I'm going to talk about public engagement and about plain language. I would say some of us that are entrenched in the planning language feel that it's already plain language. And then we've had comments where members on council and administration feel like the public might not understand some of the jargon we use. There's a difference between plain language and just really explaining it to somebody, just like our taxes. Nobody understands it, but we somehow are able to articulate that when it comes to budget. So, I think when it comes to engagement, again, there were a lot of questions from administration that we asked for clarity for our constituents. And I feel like I could have sat there another 10 minutes asking questions, and I wasn't going to do that. So I can't support this. I still have some serious concerns about the sections being removed from the local area plan. I know there's amendments coming that might support putting things back, but then why bring something to council that council has to put things back into the local area plan? But yeah, I just can't support this. I feel like there should have been more guidance retained in the plan to support contextual and sensitive development. I think that's smart planning. So I cannot support this, and it's why it's here. Did administration do what they were told, like Councillor Chabot said? Yeah, they did. I don't think you went the whole way when I talked about the rezoning stuff, but thank you for the work that you guys do. I know this is not easy, and I know this is a contentious topic, and I feel like we've done this to administration. So, when we put policies or asks in front of you, I hope you can stand up one day and say, sorry, we can't do that. Just like the Calgary plan, saying right now is not a good time. And I applaud you for doing things like that, because it shows tenacity and bravery in administration for sticking up for yourselves on things that we put forward that don't make sense right now. So I'm sorry I can't support this, but you did a fantastic job in delivering what council actually asked you to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And Councillor McLean, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chu. I'll keep it short. What Chabot said will keep me about a little longer. But the same reasoning, I didn't support it in the past. I'm not going to support this. What we just hear over and over, and what I hear from residents in here and outside, that we are not engaging enough, we're not listening enough. And when we do engage, like we did for a week or so, or 3 weeks, however long I forget, till we did public hearings, and yeah, that seemed like we listened, but we didn't actually vote in favor of what the majority wanted us to do. And I think the same here. This is just actually maybe throwing more salt in the wounds with with less engagement and not adhering to, I think, what the residents want. So that's my 2 cents. I vote no.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. And Councillor Spencer, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to speak to the fact that governance is hard on the best days, and nothing kind of interrupts forward progress more than moving back and forth. We're seeing that at a macro scale on projects like the Green Line and in other places where the conflict ultimately ends up costing people, and the way it hits community ends up being quite costly. We had a big decision point previously it seems to me there's another big one coming up, and I'd encourage, I'm not under the impression I'm going to change votes, but just wanted to speak to that. I encourage you not to make this that vote. There's an opportunity to get a new mandate pretty soon. So I will be supporting this and sure hope it passes for our community to continue to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. I see no more requests to speak, to debate on this item. And we'll go to, since this item has 3 bylaws, which is first one is North Hill, and second one is Westbrook, and the third one is Heritage Community. So we're gonna do the first.
I do need to close, Councillor Chu.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes,
That's
Councillor
okay.
Meehan, please close.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Yeah, thanks, colleagues, for the discussion. And, I respect that there's different feelings about the rezoning and that not everyone wants to see that across the city. The challenge is that is the land use that's on the ground. And fundamentally, if this does not pass, our plans don't align with the land use. And that's going to create all kinds of chaos for the people there. And ultimately, it will restrict people's development rights that they have by law, that have, withstood court challenges already. And look, if the electorate decides in the next election, a big conversation is the rezoning, and a council is elected to overturn the rezoning, and it will get overturned, right? But to sort of pass that and then now have half of our policy plans that respect that and allow that to be realized, the other half that don't, just because you don't like it. It's just from a governance perspective, this is going to wreak so many challenges. It's going to be a red tape nightmare for anyone who's trying to get through it. And just like we heard from that gentleman last night, the fact that he's had to wait this long just for us to change the plans, he's like, why didn't you just approve the change in the plans at the beginning? I really, really hope that this doesn't fail, even if you didn't support it. I totally respect that, Councillor Wong, that you were saying how, you feel like because people don't fully understand all of the aspects of it. I don't know if people are ever going to fully understand, and it is our job to help translate those things. But the worst possible situation is for us to leave all of these redundancies and things in the policies that it's going to be impossible for people to discern. And so I really hope that a couple of people who didn't necessarily support the rezoning but can understand the governance and red tape nightmare that we're setting ourselves up for if we don't do this, could please just set aside that for a second and recognize that the worst possible outcome is on a policy front is to, take a couple steps forward, but not go all of the way, because people why is it that, if you live in one LAP, then it's fully, the plans are all there. And if you live in the North Hill LAP, now it's not going to be there. It's going to be terrible. So please, 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 I implore you to think through what it means for residents, almost, irrespective of your strong feelings about rezoning. And with that, I'm closed.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. And Clerk, could you please?
Councillor Wong has a procedure question.
Oh yeah, just saw that now. Okay, Councillor Wong, please go ahead.
Yeah, just before we get into the vote, I just need,
It's closed procedural. Go ahead.
yeah, thank you. Just before we get into the vote, just need a clarification from our solicitor. Okay, voting against this, to the close that Councillor Meehan just said, voting against this, does this nullify the bylaw, the LAP? I just want to clarify that.
Can you nullify the the entire LAP
LAPs,
itself?
the 3 LAPs.
No, this is just about the amendments before you.
That's it.
Thank you. And City Clerk, and please launch the e-scribe on first reading of Bylaw 20P 2025.
Sorry, Chair, to clarify, we are voting on giving 3 readings as noted above on the screen.
Oh, okay, 03.
Councillor Wong, your vote, please.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kra, your vote, please.
You won't give them the reading if it doesn't go after it.
Thank you, Chair. All votes are in.
Okay. Please display.
Oh, we need to redo that, Dolly.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So you say it lost, the motion is defeated, and you read out.
Okay, the motion is defeated, and with Councillor Dimon, Councillor McLean, Councillor Winers, Councillor Wong, Councillor Sharp, and Councillor Chabot, and myself voting opposed to it. And
Chair, I was here.
I'm sorry?
Councillor
Dolly Wong.
Oh, you didn't register your vote. And clerk, could you please redo it again?
Sorry about that.
And go to e-scribe, please.
Councillor Dhaliwal, your vote, please.
Yes.
Councillor Sharp, your vote, please.
No.
Thank you. Chair, now all the votes are in.
Okay. Display, please. Okay, so the motion is defeated, and with Councillor Dimon, Councillor McLean, Councillor Winers, Councillor Wong, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Chabot, and myself voting opposed to it. And that's it. And that's the item.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I actually need to ask a really important clarification for administration because Councillor Walcott would have had an amendment on the Heritage Communities Local Area Plan around one of the appendixes, and without bylaw readings, what happens to it?
The LAP stays as is.
So any of the additional approved amenities that were supposed to be in there are no longer in that local area plan?
Correct. So any of the engagement we did on improvements to communities will not be included in the local area plans.
How do I get them back in there? Or do I have to bring that back some other way?
That may be a question for clerks about procedure yeah.
City Clerk, could you please?
There are options to reconsider or prepare a notice of motion.
Yeah, I guess we got to be careful what we wish for. I'll take it away and I will, I guess, and clerks procedurally, a reconsideration has to come from someone who voted no, is that correct?
Since this is a defeated motion, it will have to come from, the no side.
Okay. Yeah, careful what you wish for.
You good? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Since this is our last item, and motion to adjourn. Councillor Chabot, all agree? Any opposed? Seconder, Councillor McLean. Anyone opposed to it? No? We're done. Thank you.